My name is Jonathan Goforth with Keller Williams Platinum Partners. We're going to talk about the next round of material to help you pass the real estate exam. Today we're going to talk about rights in property, private rights, and government rights. There's a lot of good material in this, a lot of good vocabulary words, things that are going to help you pass the real estate exam. So at the very end of this are some test questions to help you practice with. We're going to cover that. We're going to help your retention after we talk about this material. All of the test questions on all of my videos are good for all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, all of this will help you pass the real estate exam. This is my 26th year as a full-time realtor. I love this. It is my dream job. It is the best career possible. And so after you're done with this, at the end, there are some test questions. At the end of that, 2 links are going to pop up on your screen. Click on either of those, both of those, for more test question material. Also, in addition to those 2 links, if you click on the description of this video at the end, I think right below in the description and the remarks, it might even say ... more. That'll pull up more text. In fact, then you might have to click ... more again because there's going to be a lot of links. I'm going to type math questions, all kinds of test questions to help you pass this exam. Let's get started. Because I have my salesperson's license in Kansas and Missouri, and I have my broker's license in Missouri, I'm going to talk about things that will help you pass the exam. So we're going to talk about this first. We're about to talk about the private rights first in real property, which will be freehold estates versus leasehold estates. We're going to talk about it in just a second. So first, let's talk about what an estate is, because we need to talk about possessory rights leading into the next little topic. So an estate, this is the degree, the nature, the quantity, and the extent of ownership interest in real property. The possessory rights, that's what we're going to talk about. The extent of ownership interest when it comes to the estate. And that's going to lead us into private rights of freehold estates versus leasehold estates. Let's talk about that right now. As we jump into this kind of material, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. You probably are feeling a little bit stressed because you're studying for an exam. This is going to help you pass the exam. So stay to the end because we're going to study first. We're going to do these videos a little different than my videos from a few months ago. This time I want to teach a little bit to help you comprehend it so that you can then retain it and pull out your knowledge to answer any type of question regarding this. We're going to talk about private rights in real property first. These are the private rights. We're going to do the government rights in a minute. There are 2 types of private rights when it comes to real property. The first one is a freehold estate. And here's how I want you to memorize it. And I'm going to say this. I've been a full-time realtor for 26 years. You don't use these kinds of terms in day-to-day selling. So in a typical day in the life of a realtor, you don't discuss these kinds of vocabulary terms with your clients, ever. But you have to know this to pass the exam. So there's 2 types of private rights. The first one is a freehold estate. Here's what I want you to memorize with freehold. The ownership with a freehold, the owner freely holds all the rights. The owner freely holds all of the rights. This is ownership. There is no definite ending date. So the owner with a freehold estate owns it until they sell it or for their entire lifetime. That's the ownership. With freehold, there is no definite ending date. This would be an example of single family property. They own it. They live in it. It's their home. Or the landlord of rental property. Their ownership is themselves and they freely hold all the rights. Freehold, they freely hold all the rights. The other way is a leasehold estate. This is a little more obvious because lease is in the title. This is for renting and leasing. So the renter has rights in real property also, but their rights are for a definite period of time. They have a lease, probably a year lease, but whatever the amount of time, there's a definite period of time in their lease. They could be on a 30-day month to month, But whatever it is, there's a definite period of time. It is a limited duration. They do not have freehold. They do not freely hold all the rights. They are not the owner. They are renting or leasing, and therefore we call that leasehold estates, and that is their private rights in real property. This part, you're going to want to do a lot of screenshotting. Some test questions will probably come out of this part of the material, so please subscribe before you go any further. Give this one a like in case I forget to ask. We're going to talk about the government rights in real property. So we just did private rights, which is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Government rights are a little more complicated. There's a little more here when it comes to studying for this wonderful exam you're about to go take. By the way, this is the best career ever imaginable. This is my dream job. So study like crazy. Go through, at the end of this video, there's going to be some test questions to practice with. At the end of that, 2 slides are going to pop up on your screen. You can click on either of those to see more test question topics. Practice like crazy. Practice, practice, practice. Just cram it all in your head. Go take the exam. Just go take it, get it over with, so you can start your career. If for some reason, and not everyone passes the first time, it's a hard exam. If you don't pass, and I hope you do, I think you will, but if you don't pass the first time, then don't get frustrated. Don't quit. Study again like crazy, as much studying as you can. Watch videos, read material, and go take it again as fast as you can, so you don't lose the foundation that you're building here. Government rights in real property. That's your key here. These are the government rights. There's 4 of them. We're going to talk about each 4 of the 4 separately. Your 4, by the way, this is for the good of the whole community. Government rights are for the good of the whole community. The entire community is what the government rights are there for. The first one is police power, taxation, eminent domain, and escheat. Those are the 4. Let's start with police power. Let's talk about police power first. I want you to memorize 3 different things when it comes to police power. Remember, we're talking about government rights. We have 4 things. The first of the 4 is the police power. The police power is to protect the public and keep things in order. These are the 3 things I want you to memorize and remember about police power. Screenshot this slide to help you remember it later. The first one is zoning. Zoning is going to look for the highest and best use of that land. What is that land going to be zoned for? And they're going to zone it for the highest and best use of what that land is. Zoning is part of police power. Building codes is another example of police power for the government rights of real property. Building codes is mainly, let's talk about new construction. Whether it's a house or multifamily, could be duplexes, could be fourplexes, could be apartment buildings around where you live. There are building code inspectors that come in during the construction process, your city inspectors. At the end of that, they're going to issue an occupancy permit. In order for the occupancy permit to be issued, all the building codes must be completed and checked off on. That's done by your local government under their use of police power. Flood maps. Flood maps fall under police power too. FEMA regulates, they're going to look at flood-prone areas, and they're going to determine what areas should go on the flood map. Flood maps also fall under police power. In case you get a question, for example, let's say you get a question of the following things, what one thing does not fall under police power? And you'll probably see these 3 plus some 4th answer that you have. That's not police power, because you know these 3 things are. So screenshot this, and now let's move to the next one. Our second form of government rights when it comes to real property is taxation. You don't want to talk about it, neither do I, but this is where your taxes come from when it comes to property for schools, roads, bridges, bonds, all those things that could be assessed against the homes in your area falls under taxation under the form of the government's right in real property. Now, this is something that I want you to screenshot this slide. I'm going to ask you a question. You may not know this. So if you're kind of new to real estate, the concept of real estate, maybe you're just now studying for the first time and all of this is new to you, then I'm going to ask you a question. If the taxes are not paid on a property, could the government have the right to foreclose? Let's say there's no loan, there's no mortgage. This house is fully paid for, but the taxes are not. The taxes have not been paid. Taxes are late. If the taxes are not paid, the government can foreclose. I want you to remember that. This is likely many times a test question on the real estate exam. Yes, the government can foreclose, and at some point along the way, they will. If too much time passes, it depends on the government, depends what that situation is. There will be many notices sent along the way, but yes, the government has the right to foreclose, to collect back taxes that are not paid. Remember that. Now, a practical side of this, let's say you get a buyer, you have a buyer and you're about to close. The buyer's taking out a loan, and so the buyer is mad that the lender is escrowing for taxes and insurance. And so they call you. They're going to vent. I don't understand why the lender has to escrow for taxes and insurance. I want to have my own money and not give it to the lender all year. Then the lender's making interest all year on my money when I can pay my own taxes, I can pay my own insurance. Lender shouldn't have to escrow for this. Why is the lender escrowing? What's the big deal? It's because the lender knows they've got a loan on that house, and the last thing they want is those taxes not being paid and the government step in and foreclose. And so the lender wants control of that. They're going to make sure those taxes are paid. And that's why loan companies escrow for taxes and insurance. It's that important to the lender because they've got a bigger stake in this house than you do if your loan is very big. And that's why lenders escrow for taxes and insurance, because the government does have the right to foreclose if they need to, if they want to, and the lender's out, potentially. Depends how many years of back taxes are sitting there late. Memorize that. You need to know, yes, the government can foreclose for back taxes. Our next one is eminent domain. Now, if you're new to real estate, you've probably heard this term, but you might not know exactly what eminent domain is. It's a great vocabulary word. You're going to want to memorize this one, screenshot this. Eminent domain is the right of the government to take private property for the good of the public. It's just that simple. Examples would be the federal government, state, local governments. They can all do this depending on what falls underneath them for responsibility. They could do it for schools. That's a big one. Railroads, utilities, roads in general, water towers. All of that can fall under eminent domain. As those things are needed in your area, the government has the right to exercise eminent domain to get those things in place. And so this is another power that the government has with its rights in real property. Before we go on to the fourth one, I want you to know what the term condemnation is. Memorize this, screenshot this. Condemnation, this is probably a word you've heard, but you may not know exactly how it fits into the process of real estate. Condemnation is the process used to take the property when the government exercises the right of eminent domain. That's what condemnation is. Condemnation is the process used to take the property when the government exercises their right of eminent domain. Yes, you need to know that. Screenshot that, and now let's move on to the fourth one. This is going to be the fourth one. This is the end of our material that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to do some test questions to help you practice, getting ready to have you go pass the exam. I have had the privilege of being listed in Forbes magazine in 2019, 20, and 2021 as one of the top market leaders in the country. That article is published by 5-Star Professional, so I'm so honored. Thank you for watching. Please give this a like, and please subscribe, because after you pass, then your real estate career begins, and that's where you can start making a lot of money. In real estate, I've got a great video on how to make $1 million in real estate. That's what my team and I were paid this last year. We were paid that the year before. It's just, this is the most awesome career Just I cannot even tell you all the wonderful things. In fact, something else that is so cool, something that happened to me just a few months ago. There's a TV show produced by the American Dream. They do this in other cities. They've been nominated for an Emmy, and they brought the TV show here. It's called Selling Kansas City. I get to be one of the hosts here in Kansas City. And so if you go back through my real estate channel, you're going to see some TV episodes of Selling Kansas City. And it's neat. It's not selling houses. These are not listed. Typically, a few of them are, but not really. They're lifestyle stories. It's things about what makes Kansas City such a great place to live. So I'm honored to get to do that. Let's talk about number 4. So the fourth right by the government when it comes to real property is called Escheat. Now, this is a weird word. We're going to talk about a corny way to help you memorize this. You need to know Escheat, you need to know abandonment, you need to know intestate. So let's talk about all that right now, and then we're going to move into some really good test questions. Escheat. Escheat is the right. Remember, these are government rights. That's why, keep that in mind. These are government rights. It's the right of the government to take private property when the owner dies intestate. Intestate means the owner has no will. That's all it means. Intestate means there is no will. And in this case, there are no heirs either. So this is the right of the government to take private property when the owner dies intestate, there is no will, and there are no heirs. There is no one to pass ownership onto. And the purpose of this is so that land and property does not go into a situation where there is no owner. It needs an owner. And so the government has the right to escheat it. They are going to cheat the dead owner out of that land, out of that property. That's how you think of it. The government's going to cheat. Don't tell the government I said this, but that's how I want you to try to memorize this. The government's going to cheat the dead owner out of their land, their property. They do that through the government right called escheat. Remember, intestate, there's no will. Just screenshot this. Screenshot this, just memorize this over and over and over. And then go take the exam. Just memorize all this stuff and go take the exam. Just get it done. Now, they can also escheat it through the process of abandonment. Let's say there is a house and it's behind on taxes. The owner has not been paying property taxes on the house. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. But because the homeowner has not been paying property taxes, the government is probably going to be taking it into foreclosure to collect whatever taxes they can get out of it. And so the homeowner can't pay it. They likely just don't have the money to pay however much of back taxes they owe. And so the homeowner leaves. They abandon the house. Homeowner leaves. They walk away from it because of back taxes. And the government, through the right of escheat, they're going to take the house because of abandonment. That's another one. When a homeowner walks away from their house because they have not paid back taxes. Now, there's a process for that. And to be honest, they don't have the money to pay it. It's possible the house just isn't worth enough to pay whatever those taxes are. But for whatever reasons, don't matter. The bottom line is the homeowner has abandoned the house, and through the right of escheat, the government's going to take it. That's what abandonment is. So you got escheat, intestate, abandonment, part of this slide. Screenshot this, and here we go. We're going to do 3 different questions, and as we're doing these, check out some links. So at the end of this video are going to be 2 slides that show up on the screen. You can click on either of those to watch more test questions, or click on the description of this video right below here. You can click on the description. It should say ... more. You can click on that. And then it might say ... more. Again, you can click on that to see more text that will pop up. I'm going to put a whole bunch of links in the description of this video that you can click on, a whole bunch of them. Math questions, especially math. You need to know some math, and I've got some great test questions to help you learn math and practice some math questions before you go past this exam. Let's start with this question. The following are examples of police power, except number 1, issuing flood maps. Number 2, building codes. Number 3, issuing emblements. Number 4, zoning. The following are examples of police power except number 3. What are emblements? Emblements are personal property. Emblements are annual crops grown by a tenant on someone else's land. That's what emblements are. You need to know that also. Next question. The process of a city having their residents sell their property and paying them fair market value is referred to as 1, rezoning. Number 2, condemnation. Number 3, eminent domain. Number 4, escheat. And your answer is number 2, condemnation. If you don't remember that one, go back and review the video a little bit, but that's exactly what it is. That's the process. Remember, that's the process of having the city take land that's private property. Next question. The right of a county, city, or state to take private property is known as, number 1, eminent domain. Number 2, condemnation. Number 3, the right of first refusal. Or number 4, severance. And your answer is number 1, eminent domain. Eminent domain is the right. So this is what I need you to remember. Eminent domain is the right of the government to take private property. That's the right. They have that right to take it. But when they do it, and the process of them doing it is condemnation. And so I just want you to remember both of those. They're very important vocabulary words, very important concepts. Eminent domain is the right of the government to do it. They always have that right. But when they do it through a process called condemnation. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, give this one a like. There's already 2 screens that have popped up. Feel free to click on one of those, either of those, and keep studying. The more you study, the better you'll do.